Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Torah class. The Torah portion is Parshat Pinchas. And in your blue Oscroll Chumash, you can find it on page 876. Parshat Pinchas, the book of Numbers. We're in the middle of chapter 25 if you're in any other Chumash. So this week's Torah portion is a continuation of last week's Torah portion. So a little background before we begin. At the end of last week's Torah portion, we learned about the story of Bilam attempting to curse the Jewish people. God puts blessings in his mouth. However, before he leaves town, he says to a very disappointed Balak, the king of Moab, who hired him to curse the Jewish people, say our rabbis, listen, I couldn't curse the Jews. God didn't allow me to. I'm sorry that blessings came out of my mouth. I'm paraphrasing. But I have one bit of advice for you. He says the best way to destroy the Jewish people is to get them to sin. And once they betray God, God will be upset with them and turn his back towards them, and then they will self-destruct. So here's what I recommend you do. Get the Midianite women to go out and entice the Jewish men to not only cohabitate with them in an immoral way, but also to lead them to their idolatrous practices of Baal Peor. Once God sees that, the deviance, sexual deviance and spiritual deviance, God will take care of them on his own. And unfortunately, this campaign was successful. And the Torah says there was a plague that broke out amongst the Jewish people. At the end, 24,000 people died. But there was one man who couldn't tolerate what he was witnessing, and his name was Pinchas. And what does Pinchas do? He takes a romach, which is a spear, and he sees a prince of a Jewish tribe, the tribe of Shimon, whose name was his name was Zimri, and he was cohabitating with a Midianite princess by the name of Cosby. And as they're in the act of immorality, Pinchas takes the spear and he spears to death the Shimonite leader Zimri as he's engaged with the princess by the name of Cosby from the nation of Midian. Now, when he does that, that halts the plague. And that's the way the parsha ended last week. What's going to happen now to Pinchas? Is he a murderer or is he a hero? On the one hand, he didn't ask anyone. He just went and took the law into his own hand and murdered a leader of a tribe who was engaged with a Midianite woman. On the other hand, the plague stopped after he did what he did. And he is what we call a zealot. Zealotry. Zealotry is somebody who's just passionate about something, stands up for what's right, does what he feels is necessary, doesn't ask any questions. And obviously, if I go out and do something because I'm a zealot and I break the law, God forbid, I'll be facing very severe consequences. And on the one hand, you could say, no one authorized the murder of this leader of the tribe of Shimon, whose name was Zimri, and this Midianite woman, and therefore you're a murderer because you took the law into your own hand. On the other hand, we know that there's some times where there's a need to do something without asking a question, or someone's life is in danger and you have to protect it. You have to just rise up and kill the person. Well, here the lives of the Jewish people were in danger. There were thousands of Jews dying from a plague. So maybe he's a hero because he stopped the plague by halting the immoral behavior of the Jews and restoring divine favor to the Jewish people rather than the wrath of God. And that's a beautiful, I don't want to call it a beautiful story. It's a heartbreaking story, but it's a story with a lot of beautiful lessons and ramifications about leadership and zealotry, and why Moses didn't do it, why did he wait for Pinchas, and why Pinchas took the law into his own hand and didn't say, well, Moses is here, let him do something about it. Why is it my place? But he saw it was a need to be done, and he did it. And our rabbis get into a lot of commentary. Moses felt incapable or unsuited to be the one to respond to this engagement between the Jewish men and the Midianite women, because after all, he was married to a Midianite woman. And actually, the tribe of Shimon's leader, Zimri, was challenging Moses by saying, you married a Midianite woman, why can't I have one? So therefore, he was, so to speak, feeble in being able to respond. And therefore, Pinchas had to stand up. But that was last week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is God's response to what Pinchas did. And what does God say? Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron, the high priest. So that tells you right away that Pinchas was no ordinary person, but he was actually the grandson of Aaron. Aaron had 4 sons. One of them was Elazar, and this was Elazar's son. So his Zaidi was Aaron, the high priest, the brother of Moshe Rabbeinu. And what does God say? God says, Pinchas removed my wrath, my anger from the Jewish people by standing up and assuaging my anger and taking up my vengeance against those who were sinning. And therefore God says, I'm going to grant Pinchas the covenant of peace. Now today we know there's something called the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, Pinchas got the Nobel Peace Prize from God himself. God granted him at Briti Shalom, which is ironic because you may say he did something very violent. How could you give someone who did something so violent, spear 2 people to death, the covenant of peace? And what God's saying is that what he did was an act that may have physically been violent, but actually brought peace again between God and the Jewish people, which means it brought internal peace to the Jewish people. Because when a person is sinning, they are alienated from themselves and from each other as the Jewish people. And what that means in practical terms is, as God says, that he and all his descendants will be the Kohanim. And that's why not just Aaron and his children and their descendants who were born after, but now Pinchas's descendants were included in the priesthood as well. So this story is a fascinating story, obviously, and its lessons reverberate in the words of Pirkei Avot that says, "B'makom she'ein ish hishtadel lihiyot ish." In a place that there is no man, you stand up and be the man. Now, it doesn't mean you should go out, God forbid, and kill people, because God's not going to speak up for you today like he did back then to Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't have a prophet today that God could communicate to and say you did the right thing or the wrong thing. And therefore, zealotry, vigilantism is not recommended today. It's not acceptable because under the law, it's forbidden to act on your own. But the idea of being a zealot in the sense that don't wait for others to act. If you see something that is wrong and you have to correct it, it's very natural to think, well, it's not my job, it's not my title, it's not my responsibility. There are others that are greater than me. Like Pinchas could have said, there's Moses, there's Aaron, there's other great leaders, and shy away. But as opposed to Pinchas, who just felt so strongly about the immorality and the injustice of what was happening, that he was propelled and compelled to take actions into his own hands and take responsibility, because no one else was doing anything about it. Nobody else was taking responsibility. And our rabbis point out that had Pinchas asked the question of Moses, he would have been told he can't do what he did. But because he did it without asking, after the fact, God determined that what he did was permissible. So the idea of being a zealot is someone who goes and risks their life for what they believe in. because Pinchas did not know that God would intervene and say, you're a hero, and therefore you're going to get the covenant of peace. For all he knew, he would have been put to death for his act, but he was willing to sacrifice his own life for the sake of defending and protecting the Jewish people from this spiritual invasion of the Midianite women that were engaging the Jewish men and causing this great spiritual decline amongst the Jewish people, which was leading to the plague that was taking the lives of so many of the Jewish people. So a zealot is somebody who acts with alacrity, with speed, and with determination and fierceness, and even self-sacrifice. And as I said, no one should ever go out and kill anyone because they're a zealot. Now, that was for then, and it was only in this circumstance where God spoke up and defended him. But we could all be a little more zealot in our own lives in terms of speaking up and advocating and championing causes and standing up against something that's immoral or unjust or improper in society, or in our communities or in our families even, and not turn a blind eye and say, live and let live. I'm not getting involved. It's none of my business. But rather say, I'm seeing something that's wrong. I need to do something to stop it. And in Pinchas's case, he did something very, very dramatic. But sometimes we don't have to do things that are so dramatic. We just have to do something to speak up or take an action that will halt whatever behavior is going on around us that is not healthy. And unfortunately, in today's society, there's no shortage of examples of things that are deviant and things that need change. And, I think it was Albert Einstein maybe who said that bad things happen in the world, not because of the evil people, but because of those who are not evil, but are silent in the face of evil. So, like Pirkei Avot said, in the place that there is no man, you be the man. And we have to think no further than Moshe Rabbeinu himself, because Moshe's whole career began as the leader of the Jewish nation when he took the initiative, sitting in the palace of Egypt, in Pharaoh's palace as a prince, being raised and adopted by the daughter of Pharaoh, far away from the slavery and the misery and the persecution of the Jewish people, the Hebrew slaves. He goes out to inquire, to see firsthand their plight. And when he sees the injustice and the cruelty and the barbarism and the slavery and the torture that the Jews are being subjugated to, he takes a stand. And on multiple occasions, he stands up. In the first instance, when he sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Jew, he stands up to defend the Jew and kills the Egyptian taskmaster and buries him in the ground. And then later, of course, he is ratted on to Pharaoh. He is informed upon, and he had to flee. And he was a fugitive because his life was in danger. And so he was a zealot in the sense that he stood up. He didn't try to work through the court system. He didn't go to he knew this was an evil, corrupt regime, and he saw what they were doing, and he said, I have to stand up and defend human life and my brethren. And he put everything he had on the line, including his life, risked his life to do it. And he ended up losing his freedom and had to run away to Midian to flee. And by the way, if you're wondering why he married a Midianite woman, Zipporah, first of all, it's a show of gratitude because she took care of him. She gave him water at the well and then invited him to live and gave him protection and shelter. But also, it was before the Torah was given, when there was no commandment against intermarriage. In those days, you met a woman and she embraced your belief in one God, and monotheism, and the traditions of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that was all there was. You built a Jewish home. You didn't, it was before the Torah's prohibition against intermarriage. So therefore, the Zimri was not correct in comparing himself to Moses and saying, well, you married a Midianite woman. But the idea of, I think having this Pinchas mentality of I am my brother's keeper, and I am responsible for not just my own actions, but the actions of others. It's not that popular today. It's maybe not politically correct because the accepted norm in society today is that no one has a right to judge anyone else or impose their standards or their values on someone else. Everyone's free to choose their own set of values. And while that's true, we believe in individuality and every person has the right to their unique free expression of who they are as a human being. There still are parameters, there still are boundaries, there still are laws in the Torah, whether it's the Noahide laws or the Judaism's laws that dictate and govern what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. And therefore, people are not just free to do what they choose or what they desire. And it's not just a matter of, well, if I'm not hurting anyone, then I can do whatever I want. There's more to life than just not hurting anyone. There are moral, ethical, spiritual standards that God set forth. So this idea of Pinchas, while it's a very extreme example and maybe an example that's not relevant to our lives today in terms of taking the law into your own hand, but there's all of us as we go through our day surely can find opportunities that we could speak up for what's right. Sometimes there's a person who's being mistreated and people just look the other way and don't speak up or stand up for that person. Pinchas teaches us, don't just think about what's convenient or what's safe for you. Do the right thing, even if there's a personal cost to yourself. So that is the opening story, the story of Pinchas, and anyone who's a descendant of Pinchas, which is the Kohanim, is in large part due to his act of courage and self-sacrifice. And that's what it takes to be a Kohen. So that's the opening episode of this week's Torah portion, a very famous story with very broad implications and ramifications, and a lot of discussion about, the limit of the law, that there are times that even, we all know that, sometimes the law either isn't adequate, it doesn't go far enough, or sometimes even worse than that, the law could be immoral. I mentioned this morning in my daily message that Germany just appointed a chaplain, a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, first chaplain in the German military since World War I. He's the first rabbi that was ordained in Germany since 1938. And one of the things he teaches, he said in an interview, in the German military, not just the Jewish soldiers, but the non-Jewish soldiers, is that part of morality is that every person has to be their own leader for themselves. And therefore, if you have a command, an instruction to do something immoral, you have to follow your own internal leadership first and foremost. And you cannot do something immoral, even though you've been instructed or commanded to do so. Not like the Nazis who said, well, we were following orders to kill Jews. Well, first and foremost, you have your duty to do what you know is morally just and correct. And therefore, there's sometimes that laws could be immoral, and therefore a person like Pinchas has to do what is necessary to follow their own moral internal compass. So now we move on to the second major episode in this week's Torah portion. And, we can't go through every verse in the Torah, but we could talk about all the major highlights. So the first story is the story of Pinchas. And now we come to chapter 27 in the book of Numbers, which is another fascinating, blockbuster, incredible story. And the women tend to love this story more than the men, although the men love it too. But it's many women refer to this as the first example in the Torah of feminism. And basically the story is about a man by the name of Tzlafchad who was blessed with 5 wonderful daughters, beautiful daughters, but no sons. And under the laws of the Torah's inheritance, the the sons inherit the father, not the daughters. And the practical reason is because the man of the house was responsible to provide for his family. So the inheritance was transferred to the sons. The daughters were married to men, and those men had to provide for them. So these 5 daughters, their father, Slavchad, passes away. And the Torah tells us the names of these 5 daughters. Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milka, and Tirza. And they come to Moses, which you have to understand, especially in those days, for 5 daughters to show up at Moses' door. And they say to Moses, our father died in the desert, and he was a good man. He wasn't part of the rebellion of Korach, and he did not leave over any sons. And they say, why should the name of our father be omitted from among his family because he had no son? Give us a possession amongst our father's brothers. And Moses brings their request to God. Here's a group of daughters, girls, women who want to have an inheritance in the land of Israel. They want their father's portion transferred to them to perpetuate the memory of their father and have a stake in the land of Israel. And God then responds to Moses and says, the daughters of Slavchad are correct. They're justified. They speak properly. Give them a portion in the inheritance of their father's land. And that becomes the law, that if a man dies henceforth and they don't have any sons, the inheritance will go to the daughter. And if there's no daughter either, then it goes to the brother and other family members. So this is the incredible story. That basically, because these women stood up and spoke up for themselves, a law was now changed in the Torah, that initially it would have been only sons inheriting, and now daughters will inherit as well. And once again, many powerful lessons to be learned from this story. One is similar to the story of the second Passover, if you recall, that we had a few weeks ago, where a group of Jews says, why should we be denied the opportunity to bring the Paschal lamb? And they were given a second opportunity. And the idea that if you don't speak up for yourself, if you don't ask, you don't get, as they say. But the much deeper lesson, and of course the idea of women, equality, women's rights, all of that. But the deeper, most powerful lesson here is that our rabbis give us a deeper understanding of the story. And they say that what was their motivation? So on the surface, you may say, well, everyone likes an inheritance. Who doesn't want to inherit? So they just wanted to receive a piece of land, real estate, but that wasn't their motivation. Our rabbis say that their true motivation was that they loved the land of Israel and they wanted a portion in the land of Israel. If you remember the story of the spies, it was 12 men that came back and said, no, we don't want to go to the land of Israel. And the commentaries say, had it been women, they would have insisted to go to the land of Israel because the women had a greater love for the land of Israel than even the men did. And therefore, these daughters, what they wanted was a portion in the land of Israel because of love of Eretz Yisrael, the love for the land of Israel. And what the story is teaching us is that when you love something, that's when you hold on to it. That's when you merit to inherit it. And that even though the law was not originally written in their favor, because as daughters they were not going to inherit it, when they demonstrated their love for the land of Israel, they were granted the request to be able to inherit their father's land. And the lesson is very applicable to all of us today, on a practical level with the land of Israel, that if we love the land of Israel, like the daughters of Slavchad love the land of Israel, we'll merit to maintain it and sustain it. The only reason we as Jews came back to Israel after 1900 years of exile is because we never lost our love for the land of Israel. Every year at the end of Passover and at the end of Yom Kippur, we always said, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. We always longed and yearned to go back to the land of Israel. And when you hold on to something with love and you're connected to it, you will reclaim it. You will one day achieve it, because what you love you actually give birth to, you materialize, you bring to fruition in your life. And as long as you have a longing and a love for something, you will achieve it. You will accomplish it. And because they love the land of Israel, they merited to inherit a portion of the land of Israel. And as parents, what we learn from this story is that what we want to transfer to our children can only be transferred through love. So because Tzlafchad raised daughters who loved the land of Israel, therefore they merited to inherit the land of Israel. And if we want certain values or traditions to be passed on to our children as an inheritance, not as a physical inheritance, but as a spiritual inheritance, then first and foremost, we must love that which we want to transmit to our children, to our descendants, because the glue, so to speak, that links one generation to the next, or that transmits our values and beliefs, is our own love for it. When our children see we love something, then they learn to love it as well. And the most practical application for this is Judaism. There are no guarantees in life, of course, but by and large, when children see their parents' passion, love for Judaism, for Torah, for Hashem, they will inherit that. They will own that. And in today's day and age, when we see many young Jews who are, you can never lose your Jewish inheritance because it's yours no matter what, whether you love it or not. You own it. It's yours as a Jew. It's your birthright. But unfortunately, you could, while you still own it, you could still lose it by not, engaging and experiencing it and studying it. And therefore, it is through our love for Judaism that we hold on to it and preserve it and maintain it, and then ultimately transmit it to future generations. And that's one of the lessons that we learn from the daughters of Tzlafchad, that they loved the land of Israel and demanded a portion in the land of Israel. So that's story number 2, the daughters of Tzlafchad, who remain as a paradigm for all of these lessons of speaking up, standing up for what you feel you're entitled to, and also the idea of women's rights and equality and feminism, and most of all, the idea that what you love will always remain within your family. Those are the things that will persevere and endure, the things that you showed love and affection to during your lifetime. But now we come to story number 3, which is again a major event in this week's Torah portion, and it's chapter 27, verse 12. And here is where God comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, your time is up, basically. Go up to Har HaAvarim, Mount Avarim. Take a look at the land of Israel that I'm going to give to the Jewish people. You should see it, because you're not going to go into the land of Israel. You're going to be gathered unto your nation, which means you're going to pass away as your brother Aaron passed away in the desert as well. And God tells them why. Once again, because you rebelled against my word at the waters of strife at Kadesh, when Moses struck the rock, not as God told him to speak to the rock. And here we come to very, very powerful verses with multi-layer messages and lessons that are so relevant to all of our lives. Moses, as the most selfless Jewish leader, is just told he's going to die. And what does he ask God for? He says, my last request, may Hashem, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a person over the assembly who shall go out before them and come in before them, who shall take them out and bring them in. And let the assembly of Hashem, God's people, the Jewish nation, not be like sheep that have no shepherd. So Moses' final request to God before he dies is that God should appoint a new leader, that the Jewish people should not be shepherdless without a leader. And so God says, sure, no problem. Take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom there is a spirit of God, and lean your hand upon him, and you shall stand before Lazar the Kohen and before the entire assembly, and command him before your eyes, and place some of your majesty upon him, so that the entire assembly of Israel will pay heed. So do it in the presence of the nation, so they know you're passing on your leadership, your spirit to him. And that's what happens. Moses places his hands on Joshua, and Joshua is now ordained, confirmed as the new leader of the Jewish people. Now, there's a lot to be dissected in this story. The first question is, the lineup in the Torah is always precise. One story follows another. And the question is, we just had a story of the 5 daughters of Tzlafcha demanding an inheritance in their father's land. Right after that, God tells Moses, okay, now the time of your death has arrived. Look at the land of Israel from the mountaintop, but you're not going to go in. And Moses turns to God and says, just please, one last thing, appoint a new leader. So our rabbis give us the backstory, and they say, you know why Moses asked at this point for a new leader? Because he just saw what happened with the daughters of Tzlafcha, that the daughters of Tzlafcha merited to inherit their father's portion in the land of Israel. So Moses says, okay, now I'm going to ask for my children, meaning, okay, God, appoint a new leader, hoping that God would say, okay, you have 2 sons, Gershon and Eliezer. They should be appointed the new leaders. What he was really asking for was that he should merit to see his sons succeed him in his role of leadership. But unfortunately for Moses, God says, okay, I will appoint a leader. Joshua, your disciple. And Moses transfers with both hands. Our rabbis say, you see that he didn't hold any grudge or bad will. Once God told him it's Joshua, he gave with both hands. He put both of his hands on Joshua with a full heart. He ordained him, confirmed him as the next leader of the Jewish people. Now, that in itself raises a very important question. The question is, why didn't Moses merit that his children should succeed him as the next leaders of the Jewish people? His oldest son, maybe, or both of his sons, why are they passed up? And the answer, obviously, is that they were wonderful sons. They must have been wonderful sons. They were Moshe Rabbeinu's children, but clearly not as great and capable as Joshua. Joshua was the most devoted, loyal student of Moses. So Joshua is the one who becomes the next leader. And there are a lot of discussions as to why Moses' children didn't emerge as the next greatest leaders. And there's a range of answers. One answer is that, they had a grandfather by the name of Jethro. When they grew up as children, they were in their grandfather's home who was an idolater. Maybe that had an influence on them. Another answer given is that maybe because of Moses' leadership responsibilities, he didn't have as much time to devote to his own children, unfortunately, as he was so preoccupied with communal responsibilities. And a host of various other answers. But one answer is that God deliberately didn't want Moses' children to succeed him. Why? Because we all know the verse that says, Torah tziva lana Moshe, the Torah that Moses taught us, Morashah is an inheritance, Kihilat Yaakov, for the whole congregation of Jacob, which means as follows. It says in Pirkei Avot, there are 3 crowns. There's the crown of Torah, scholarship. There's the crown of priesthood, Kuhuna, and then there's the crown of Malchut, which is kingship. 2 of these crowns are transmitted from parents to children. It's something that is automatic. If you're a Kohen, your children are Kohanim, and on from generation to generation. The same thing with kingdom. It has to be in the home, in the dynasty of David. The sons of the kings become the princes and the future kings. That's the way it works in monarchy, even till today. The queen, in the royal family, right? It is something that is inherited from generation to generation. But when it comes to Moses's form of leadership, which is not the kingdom of kingship like David and his dynasty, not Aaron and the priesthood dynasty, but scholarship, Torah knowledge, which is what made Moses the great leader, the prophet, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the teacher of Torah. When it comes to that crown of Torah, it's not like the other two crowns. It is transmitted from parents to children automatically. It's rather the most qualified person who toils and exerts the most effort in obtaining the knowledge of Torah. That's the one who wears that mantle, that crown of Torah. And therefore, deliberately, God didn't want it to be Moses' children, to show all future successive generations that everyone has an equal shot, so to speak, at obtaining the crown of Torah. You don't have to come from a great lineage, ancestry, you could come from very humble origins, and you could emerge as a great Torah scholar if you devote yourself to the study of Torah, just like Joshua merited to inherit the crown of Torah from Moses, while his very own children did not. I saw there was a comment before, so I just want to see what someone said. It's always good to interact even on Zoom. I thought it was so a family didn't have a corner on leadership. I guess you're referring to why Moses versus Aaron's leadership was not transmitted to his children, so it doesn't remain within one family. Okay, that's correct as well. But specifically, the idea that Torah, God gave the Torah in the desert because God wanted to demonstrate that just like the desert is owned by everyone, no one has exclusive rights over the desert, so too the Torah is available and accessible to every person, every Jew, and no one person has a monopoly, so to speak, on Torah, and therefore it wasn't necessarily Moses' children. It was the most qualified disciple of Moses, the most learned person, who was the one who merited to become the next leader of the Jewish people. But now a few more insights to the story of leadership. And one of them I discussed in the video this morning, so I'm sorry if it's a little bit repetitive. But it says God told Moshe, Moses says to God, if God Hashem ruchot l'chol basar ish aleida, which means may Hashem, God of the spirits of all flesh, appoint a man over the assembly. So the obvious question that Rashi raises is, why does it say God? Moses says God, who is the God of all the spirits of all flesh. What kind of a term is that in addressing God? And Rashi gives a famous answer that what Moses was saying to God was, God, you, the creator of all spirits, know that no two human beings have the same spirit. Every person is in the image of God, but everyone has a unique characteristic and qualities and traits and personal self-expression. And therefore, you know that people are not alike. People are very different than one another. And there are two types of leaders. There are those leaders that try to get everyone to conform to be one way under their leadership and create clones. But a Jewish leader has to be someone that nurtures everyone's individuality, because God made us different, because he wants us to develop our own unique abilities and talents and skills. And we can't, just like a good teacher or a good parent doesn't expect all his students or all his children or her children to be identical, recognizing each one has their uniqueness and develops each one's personality and talents. So too, a leader of a nation has to respect the differences amongst people. And therefore, he says, God, you are the God of the leader, of the spirit of every human being. You know that people's spirits and personalities are different, and therefore appoint the leader that could relate to each person individually. And this is the most important criteria of a great leader. And we're all leaders in our homes, leaders in our communities, leaders in our families, in society. The definition of a leader is identifying and recognizing the uniqueness of every individual and helping that person play their note in the ballad and the symphony of life. Just like the body has many different organs and faculties, and each one has its own job. its own function, and together they come together to form a healthy body. So too a community, a society, a nation is made up of the diversity of many different types of people with different interests and different talents and different perspectives. And it's making something cohesive out of all of that is what a leader has to do. Just like a conductor of a symphony, has each note played at the right time to create this beautiful ballad, doesn't ask them all to play the same note over and over and over again. And by Moses saying, you, God, are the God of the spirit of all of mankind, the individual makeup of every person. Therefore, appoint a leader who not only is tolerant of each person's individuality, but actually acknowledges it and appreciates it and, accentualizes it and draws out each person's unique characteristics to lead them in the path that they are most suitable to succeed in. And that's lesson number one of, we know that's what good teachers do, that's what good parents do, and that's what a good leader has to do as well. That's one insight of our rabbis. Another insight is as follows. If you look at verse 17, it says, this leader over all of flesh, you should appoint a ish aleda, a man over the congregation. Now, the word ish doesn't just mean a person. It means like ish is like a mensch. He should be a good person. The first criteria is he should be a ish. He should be like ish Moshe anav ma'od. At the end of the Torah, Moses' life, the Torah says the man Moses was the most humblest person in the face of the earth, which means with all of his greatness, he remained a mensch. He remained a good person. But here's the next verse. The verse says that this person, Asher Yetzei lifneihem v'asher yavo lifneihem, he shall go out before them and come in before them. And then it says, v'asher yosiem v'asher yiviem, he shall take them out and bring them in. And let the assembly of God, Hashem, not be like sheep without a shepherd. And the question is, it sounds repetitive. Listen to the words. I'll do it in English. Who shall go out before them and come in before them, and who shall take them out and bring them in? What's the difference between going out before them and coming in before them, and who shall take them out and bring them in? It sounds like it's the same thing. Go out and bring them in. What's the difference? And one of the explanations is like this, that a Jewish leader has to be in the forefront. Israeli army, I believe, the generals, they go out when they lead the soldiers to battle. The generals go in the front. Sometimes kings or generals go in the back because they figure, okay, if there's casualties, let it be the soldiers. I'll be in the rear to be protected. But a Jewish general, till today in the Israeli army, the general goes up front because he has to lead the troops. And that's with Moshe Rabbeinu, the same thing. Moshe says the Jewish leader who will go out before them and come in before them. He'll be a leader, literally, that he will go in front of them, always. But then he says, who shall take them out and bring them in, which means to say as follows. I once heard from someone who said, a good leader has to be a visionary. And visionary means that you have to be ahead of everyone else. You have to be able to see things that no one else can see, right? But the person said to me, to be a good leader, you have to make sure you're ahead of everyone else, but not too far ahead of everyone else. Because if you're 20, 30% ahead of everyone else in your vision, then you're a great visionary. You could see things no one else sees. And you'll be respected and lauded and praised for your great vision. But if you're too far out in front of people, like 70% out, then they'll say you're a meshugana. Because they'll say you're crazy. That can never happen. That's not possible because you're too far out in front of the people. So you have to lead, but you can't lead so far out that you're no longer in touch with the people. You have to stay within reach. So even if you see something that's way beyond what people could see, if you get too far out, they're going to lose you, so to speak. It's like a leader of a group. You ever went on a tour mission, right? So the leader is always in front telling everyone, follow me, right? But if the leader goes so far out ahead, everyone loses him. They don't know where he is. So it's great to be a leader and be the one who goes out in front of the nation, but make sure you're still leading them. Make sure they're following you, because sometimes you're so far out there that they're not following you anymore because they think you're going over the cliff. You're crazy. It makes no sense what you're saying. So make sure, and that's really a big part of leadership. Good leaders not only have a vision and go towards that vision, but they bring the people along with them. Because if you don't have the people coming behind you, you may be right. You may be going in the right direction. But if they lose you because they can't keep up with you, so to speak, then what was the point? And that's so practical. Even a teacher, right? Sometimes the teacher is like so far ahead of the students can't keep up with the students. So you have to lead the students and be ahead of the students and show them the direction, but you have to make sure they're staying behind you, they're staying close to you, they're following you. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu says both criteria. Appoint a leader who will go out before them and come in before them, but who shall take them out and bring them in, that he's actually leading them, not that he's, so, because Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest prophet. He has to make sure that the people are able to stay up with him. And we know that many times leaders, they have a vision, they have a plan, right? And then they'll say, okay, now I'm going to go on a tour to sell it to the American people, right? They don't just say, that is my plan, my vision, I'm just going to go do it. No, now I got to explain it to the people what I'm doing to make sure they're coming with me on this journey that we're going to go towards. So that's the next amazing story in this week's Torah portion. Now we come to chapter 28. Believe it or not, chapter 28 is one of the most famous sections of the Torah. And that is because chapter 28 and 29 is the offerings brought on the different holidays and days of the year. And whenever we come to various holidays, we read from this Torah portion. And that's why when a Torah scribe wants to check a scroll, he'll often check this week's Torah portion because it's the section of the Torah that gets the most wear and tear, the most use, because it's read on multiple occasions throughout the year. So if the section of Pinchas of the sacrifices and the offerings in the temple are in the Torah scroll, the letters are good, you could assume the rest of it is good as well. So it begins with the daily offerings. We all know that in Judaism, we have basically 3 services daily, morning, afternoon, and evening. But the truth is that the evening service, if you ever noticed, if you've been to shul in the evening time, you'll notice there's no repetition of the Amidah. The cantor only repeats the Amidah in the morning and afternoon service. Why? Because the first 2 services of the day, morning and afternoon, are mandatory. They correspond to the daily offerings in the temple. The evening one is voluntary. So therefore, there's no repetition of the Amidah in the evening services, whichever night of the year it is. But the daily offerings in the temple was 1 sheep in the morning, 1 sheep in the afternoon. And today we don't have a temple, we don't bring sacrifices, so we have the offerings of the prayers in the morning and the afternoon. And when we talk about sacrifices, we don't bring sacrifices today, but the idea of sacrifice is one of the most important words in the English vocabulary, because no relationship can succeed without the willingness to make sacrifices. And that's not only true in our relationship with our fellow man and our loved ones, but also with God. So we have to be willing to sacrifice for God. And that's the idea of the daily remembrance of the daily offerings. So whether it's between man and fellow man or man and God, there always has to be that element of sacrifice. So again, we ask the question, why does the laws of the daily sacrifices, and then it goes to Rosh Chodesh and all the different holidays, but why is it that it follows the story of Moses asking God to appoint a new leader? And once again, Rashi gives a very moving answer. Rashi says that, as an analogy, that there was once a woman who was dying, and she turns to her husband and says, listen, before I die, I want you to promise me that after I die, you'll look out for the children and take good care of my children. And the husband says, of course, I promise you, I'll take good care of your children, of our children. But do me a favor, don't just instruct me to take care of the children. Instruct our children to also take care of me, their elderly father, as well. So too, our rabbis say that, so too say our rabbis that Moses turns to God and says, God, I'm about to die. One last request, appoint a new leader to take care of my children, the Jewish people, my flock, so they don't remain without a shepherd. And God says, okay, take Joshua and put from your spirit on him. However, at the same time, God now says to Moses, before you die, instruct the Jewish people to bring me my daily offerings. In other words, don't just tell me to take care of my children, which I will do through Joshua. Tell my children to take care of their father, to look after their father, to bring me my daily offerings, to be in contact with me, their father, to pray, to worship, to serve God, to bring sacrifices to God. The relationship is mutual. And what's very powerful about this midrash is because it's saying is that it's not just that we need God. God needs us too, right? Just like a child needs a parent needs a child. And the parent is very much dependent on the love of the child. And therefore, we shouldn't just think of our relationship with God as us needing God. What does God need from us? As JFK said, don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Don't ask what God can do for you. Also ask what you can do for God. Just like a parent who's waiting to hear from their child, and if they don't, their child doesn't call them or speak to them, the parent cannot be happy, because the parent is intertwined with the child and needs that love and connection with the child. So too God needs our love and connection. And he says it very bluntly here by saying, bring me my daily offerings. And God even refers to it as lachmi, my bread, my sustenance, my nourishment. And therefore God says, I am always waiting for the daily offerings. And I wanted you to come into the temple and to serve me and to communicate with me and remain in contact. And today we do that through prayer. And therefore, just like there are certain children who only call their parents if they need something from their parents. Sometimes it could be a Jew who only turns to God if they need something. If God forbid something is wrong in their life, suddenly, as they say, no atheist in a foxhole, right? But as good children, we should be in touch with God every day. God wants to hear from his children, just like a parent wants to hear from their children. And therefore prayer, and not just once a day, but twice a day, morning and afternoon. And that's why at this juncture, after Moses asked for God to look after the Jewish people, God says also teach the Jewish people to look after their Father in heaven and to bring me the daily offerings. And that's why pretty much the second half of the Torah portion of Pinchas is all about all the different offerings for the various days of the year, various holidays, whether it's Rosh Chodesh or whether it's Shavuot or whether it's Passover, or Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And it's always on these holidays that we take out a second Torah and read these sections that deal with the various offerings, reminding us that we want God to lead us, but God says, I need you to also look after me, so to speak. And just like food is what keeps our body and soul together and keeps the soul attached to the body and functioning and, pulsating and vibrating in a positive way through the body. God says these offerings are my food. They keep God, which is the cosmic soul of the universe, engaged and connected to the world, and brings down God's flow of life and energy into the world. And God says God doesn't eat, obviously, but God refers to these offerings as a sustenance, lachmi, my bread. And then God says right here, reach nichoach. If you look at verse 3 says, verse 2 says, command the children of Israel, they shall bring to me my food, my daily food for my fires. And then it says, reach nichochi, my satisfying aroma. Now, what's the difference between food and aroma? Food gives you energy to live. Aroma gives you pleasure. And what God is saying to us through these metaphors is that your prayers and your Torah study and your good deeds are like satiating food for my soul, and they are like an aroma that gives me pleasure. And just like you don't have to eat 24/7, but you have to take intervals during the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Sometimes people eat 2 meals a day to eat, to keep your body and soul together. So too, just like you have to eat periodically to keep the energy of your soul in your body alive, so too to bring God's energy into this world, we have to have periodic periods of time that we connect with God, whether it's as we're doing now through studying his Torah, having a conversation with God through his Torah or through prayer or through acts of goodness and kindness and righteousness. And that's the way we sustain the world and bring God's presence and God's energy. And, watching what's going down in Surfside, Florida, our thoughts and our prayers and our hearts are with all those going through this very terrible tragedy. And people often ask the question, well, how could God allow something like this to happen? And where is God? And we don't know and we don't understand God's ways. If you want to see God in Surfside, Florida, look at the hundreds and hundreds of volunteers who are working day and night to save life and to help people and to provide food and clothing and shelter. And you see the goodness of human nature. What is that if not godliness? Okay, animals aren't kind to strangers. It's only human beings who literally poured in from every part of not just the state, but literally the world. I mean, the IDF came from Israel and many other rescue missions, and just people working in the hot Florida sun all day, climbing through the rubble with 100 pounds of gear on them, hour after hour after hour, and working through the night and sleeping just a few hours on the site, not even going to a hotel room to sleep, just to try to find some lives and save other people's lives. And you see God in that interaction, in that presence, and that love that you see human beings showing compassion and love for one another. And that's what God is saying. What God is saying is that is what keeps this world functioning. It's drawing God into this world through our actions. Our actions bring God into this world in a very tangible, visible way. We reflect the image of God that's within all of us when we act properly and righteously and lovingly and justly and divinely with one another and with Hashem. And that's what Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu. Yes, I will provide leaders to lead the Jewish people and to look after my flock, the Jewish nation, but they also have to remember their responsibilities, their duties, their offerings, their sacrifices that they must make to God. And when you have that symbiotic relationship between God and man, then you have a healthy, functioning home, family, unit, body and soul, heaven and earth come together in the most beautiful possible way. But it cannot be a one-sided relationship. As you know, it's not enough for parents to love their children. There has to be reciprocal. Honor your father and mother. And that's the final message going on between Moshe Rabbeinu and God before he passes away. Let me just check if there are any messages, chats, I should say. Just wondering, so is affirmative action not considered a desirable thing according to Torah study? Not putting this on main chat to politically incorrect. Rabbi, isn't it true that God has no needs? Okay. And okay, thank you. So as far as the easier question, which is, does God have no needs? So actually, God does have needs. I mean, it's a misconception to think God does have no needs, because God not having any needs is true in the sense that God's omnipotent and all powerful and doesn't need anything. But God chose to have a need. What is his need? His need is to be in a relationship with us. So going back to the simple analogy of having children, right? When you have a child, you are now basically saying, I have a need to love this child and to be loved by this child. So you are now making yourself vulnerable to being dependent on the love of someone else. Same thing with marriage, right? If you don't get married, well, I don't need anything from anyone. I'm independent. But when you open yourself up to a relationship, what you're saying is, now I need your love. And if someone says, well, I'm married, but I don't need my wife's love, I don't need my husband's love, I'm independent. Well, that's not marriage. Marriage is that I am making myself needy in the sense that I want your love and attention and affection. And if you don't give it to me, I will be deprived. And when God gave birth to us, so to speak, when he created man and gave us his Torah and said, I want to be in a relationship with you, like analogy of a man and a woman, he is now dependent on us. And just like a kid who doesn't ever call his parents, the parent is sad and lonely and disappointed and maybe even suffers heartache from it. God, so to speak, when we don't take the time to love him back, so to speak, because he's loving us constantly. He's providing us with everything we need, the air to breathe and all of our functioning body parts that are living every moment. That's God pulsating through our body, but he wants us to, not because he physically needs something, but emotionally, so to speak, spiritually, he's asking for something in return. Now, if you don't mind clarifying, Amy, what you mean, why did the question about affirmative action come up? Well, that wasn't you. I misunderstood it. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, so again, I wish everyone a wonderful day. Again, we only touched on some of the main points of the Torah portion. Obviously, there's a lot more to learn, and you're always welcome on Shabbos to the Palm Beach Synagogue, where we will go into greater depth throughout the Shabbat morning service into everything in this Torah portion. But till then, wish everyone a good week, and thank you for joining our class today. Shavua Tov. Thank you.